Hi, I'm Cathy Neptune, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to share with you tips, tools, and recipes to make your time in the kitchen fun, fast, and fabulous. We're going to do some nice glazed salmon that I think you'll love. Salmon is all the rage. It's healthy, it's easy, and most everybody loves a nice glazed salmon. And then we're going to do an asparagus risotto because nothing says spring like asparagus. So we're going to do that in a fun and easy way. And for dessert, you're going to love this. We're going to do a chocolate peanut butter pudding that kind of tastes like that candy with the peanut butter and filling with the chocolate. And it's just easy and it's so good. It's so good. So we're going to get started doing a risotto. And this is kind of a cheating way to do a risotto. Usually the traditional way is you add the chicken stock to your rice, about a scoopful every few minutes, and it usually takes about half an hour to do. Well, we're going to create the same textures and flavors, but in an easier way. So we're going to start out here with an onion, and just a small onion, and as usual, I'm going to have the measurements of all the ingredients at the end of this video, so make sure you save some time to look at that and write them down or save them. And this is just a regular onion, or you could use a shallot if you have shallots. That'd be great in here. And I'm going to turn up my heat on my pan here, just a regular skillet on low. And I'm going to heat up a little bit of olive oil because we're going to saute the onions. Probably about a tablespoon of a good olive oil. And some of you have written in and told me all your olive oil adventures that you're trying new olive oils, flavors, and vinegars too. So I'm so glad you're doing that. It makes it so much more interesting when you branch out and use non-traditional flavorings. And olive oil and vinegars are a good way to go. So we're going to add this to our skillet. And it's just going to simmer away with the full measurement of chicken stock, not one ladle at a time, but all at once. And you'll see how we're going to get that texture at the end, so stay tuned for that. And then our olive oil is heated up, and I'm just going to put the onions in there. And just to soften them and get the flavor, I'm just going to toss these. Turn my heat up. And let that hang out for just a few minutes on a medium heat to saute. And then what I have here that's an important ingredient is some dry white wine, like a Chablis is very good. Nothing too sweet. You don't want to have it taste like sugar. And then we have 2 cups of some beautiful chicken stock that I have. That's all room temperature. And we're going to saute the onions. You can hear them sizzling. And this is to soften the onions and get all the flavor that you can out of them. It's all about encouraging flavors at every level of your cooking. It makes a big difference in the final product. Just until those are translucent. Now here we have a cup of regular rice. The traditional one would be arborio rice. But you don't need to do that. Use what you have. I'm going to add that. And we're going to toast the rice, which is a wonderful technique to use I even do that with pasta sometimes. You've heard me say many times that I love orzo. And you could even do this with a dry orzo and then add your liquids and flavor it. And you get a nice toasty flavor. That's the way they make rice pilaf. You know, they use mostly either pine nuts or toasted orzo in the pilaf. And it gives it a nice nutty toasted flavor. It's a good way to go. You just want to stir that so it doesn't burn And I'm not adding any salt because we have seasoning in the chicken stock. You could use beef stock and make this more of a, that would be a little bit heavier flavor, or vegetable stock to make it vegetarian. That's another great tip. So we're going to keep stirring it. I'm going to show you the rice is kind of caramelizing a little bit. You can see it's getting a nice toasty. It smells so good with the onions. And then I'm going to add a half a cup of the white wine, and we want to cook that down before you add the chicken stock. So the wine is going to reduce and take all that bitter flavor and alcohol out. So this would be, since the alcohol cooks off, it's safe to serve it to children or younger people, and it's not going to have an impact because the alcohol is all going to burn off. So we're going to let that simmer for a few minutes, and when we come back, we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. We'll be right back. Welcome back. All of the wine that we added, you can see, it's all dissipated and absorbed into that raw rice. Now, very carefully, so it doesn't spatter, I'm going to add our chicken stock. Oh, that wasn't bad. And the full 2 cups. And I hope you're making your own chicken stock and freezing it, because that's the best. And like I said, we don't need to add any salt because the stock has been seasoned. And we're going to put this onto the stove and just bring it up to a simmer and let that cook basically for about 20 minutes. So you want to check it every once in a while and give it a stir. But that should set, and then we're going to finish it off with some other ingredients. Now we're going to make dessert. You're going to love this recipe. This was so fun to do. And these are all our ingredients. And I'm going to swap that over here because I'm going to use the front burner into a heavy bottom pot. We'll set with this for now. And don't forget the little trick to put a wet white paper towel underneath your cutting board so your cutting board doesn't slide. Now we're going to do our peanut butter recipe here, and this is a nice heavy duty pot that has a heavy bottom on it. And what we have here, we're going to add our dry ingredients to start. Now this is a half a cup of plain sugar, but I have also made this with a sugar substitute, a 1-to-1 ratio, which is, I suggest doing that because then everybody can have it. And then, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch with just a pinch of salt, just a little bit. That is always good when you're baking to bring out the sweetness. And then a 1/4 cup of just unsweetened cocoa. Now the cornstarch, usually when you're making puddings, you have to do egg yolks, but the cornstarch is a substitute for the egg yolks. So that's a good thing. And then I have here 2 cups of milk. Now this is going to be a little bit lumpy, and I'm doing this ahead because sometimes the cocoa can have little lumps in it, but those, if you get most of them out, you don't need to sift it or anything. We want to make this easy. So I have 2 cups of regular whole milk. And it isn't going to incorporate right now. When the milk comes up to a simmer, the chocolate is going to melt and incorporate into the milk in the cocoa. And you can see it's still a little lumpy, but that's going to change. And you want to keep your eye on this. And I'm going to put this on the stove. And turn it up a little high, and we want to watch that. So when it comes up to a simmer, we're going to add Right at the end, you're going to see it thicken, and I'm going to show you what the difference. You can see that's very liquidy and very lumpy, but that's going to change the more you stir it. And you want to stir that and cook it on low the minute it comes up to a boil. Reduce it and just simmer it for about 8 minutes. It'll take time for that cornstarch to kick in and thicken it. And then we're going to add some butter and some vanilla and peanut butter. Now, the trick is with peanut butter, you can see this is not that liquidy organic one. This is, and if you do have that, make sure you drain the oil off very, very carefully. Don't mix it in with it, or it's going to make your pudding not set well. So this here is just a half a cup of regular dry, like a dry peanut butter on the dry side, not with the oil. So we're going to add that. We're going to check on our rice, and when we come back, we'll be ready to add everything else into our chocolate peanut butter pudding. It's fabulous. We'll be right back. I want you to check out how thick and luscious this is. And it looks just like chocolate peanut butter. And that's what the cornstarch does instead of having to add egg yolks. And then you wonder what to do with the rest of the egg whites that you don't use. And that only took about 8 minutes on the stove. And you want to see what I have here? I love this. I like the rounded edges because it gets into all the corners when you're doing something like this. You can, of course, use a whisk if you want, but this is just so much more efficient. And then into this, we're going to add the rest of our ingredients, a tablespoon of regular butter. It doesn't have to be softened. And that's just going to melt in there you can see how hot it is, really quickly. And then a teaspoon of good vanilla. Don't buy the imitation. And that's about a teaspoon of vanilla. This tastes like a lovely, soft, and silky piece of chocolate peanut butter cups. And then half a cup of peanut butter without all the oil in it. And this is what gives it that flavor. You know what I was thinking too? We're going to put a little whipped cream as a garnish, but wouldn't it be fun to put a dollop of strawberry jam on the top and then the whipped cream, and it tastes just like a chocolate and peanut butter sandwich. And see this? This is all going to melt right into that. It doesn't look too good in the beginning, but believe me, the heat in there is going to melt everything, and it just takes a minute. And you can see why you want a whisk or a spatula to do this. And at the same time, it kind of cools the pudding down, and we're going to put it into some pretty glasses. And this chills for about an hour. You could even make this the night before. You can see how silky this is getting and thick. And that's all there is to it. What you can do with most of these ingredients you would have on hand, I'm sure. Just regular unsweetened cocoa powder and milk and vanilla and peanut butter, and you're good to go. And a little cornstarch, pinch of salt. Look at that. Doesn't that look like the creamiest pudding ever? And we have here some ramekins, the little pretty little dishes. And I'm going to use a ladle, and we're going to ladle this into our pretty little glasses. Look at that. Is that beautiful? I'm going to try and get them all even. Try not to get any on the edge, which I did, but that'll be mine. Oh, there's another drip. We'll just clean that up. Like I said, just put this in the refrigerator if you can wait an hour. And it sets up just like the most creamy, luscious homemade pudding you've ever had. Your kids would love this if they like peanut butter. Or make it for your friends who aren't allergic to peanut butter. You got to check on that. That's good. And I'm going to cool those down just a little bit. And then we're going to pop them into the refrigerator when they're all set. And then we're going to add some toppings. I did some earlier so they could set. And we're going to garnish this on the top with some lovely whipped cream. Set that over. And now we're going to do our salmon. Set those there. And I love salmon. It's just so fun to do. And we have my oven heating, preheating. And I'm going to get out our salmon. I'm going to check on our risotto. It's about 3 more minutes and that's going to be done. We have a beautiful piece of salmon, fresh salmon. And I try and get the center cut if I can. Oh, this is beautiful salmon. Beautiful piece of salmon. I'm going to set that here for a minute on the side. Take my cutting board and we're going to make a sauce. And we're going to add some brown sugar, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Let me get a spoon. And you know, I always say it's nice to have all your ingredients out so you don't miss anything. And some Dijon mustard, a tablespoon of Dijon. Very important to have the Dijon mustard. 1 clove of garlic. I have 2 cloves here. 2 tablespoons of good soy sauce. I'm going to mix that together. And that's going to be our glaze. And what else I'm going to use? I don't want to miss my recipe. I don't want to forget anything. Mustard and olive oil. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil too. About a tablespoon of olive oil. And we're going to take asparagus, and I have a sheet pan here. We're going to bake this at 400 degrees in the oven. And what I like to do is chop up our asparagus before we cut up the salmon and prepare that. And I don't know if we're going to use the whole thing. But you know, there's a myth about asparagus that you take it like this and you snap them. You're wasting about half of your asparagus. And if they're very much thicker, these are nice and thin and tender, but if they're much bigger than this, you want to peel the bottom third of your asparagus. But what I like to do is just take them and chop off about 2 inches off the bottom and not waste the rest of it, because there's a lot of good flavor and they are very tender when they're this thin. And like I said, if you take your asparagus and just shave them if they're bigger than this or thicker, then you're going to be okay. They should be tender. And I'm going to see, let's do in about 1-inch chunks. And the asparagus this time of year is so nice. I'm going to put those in and they're all washed and ready to go. Do about 1-inch chunks. And then I leave the tops on there. I think that'll be enough for 2 people. I'm going to save these for another time. But these are good. I'm going to turn off our rice, our risotto. You can see how nice and fluffy and all the liquid has been absorbed. So we're just going to set that aside and let it stay steamy and hot. And we'll finish that off. Now on here, I'm going to take some fresh lemon zest, and I always want to season in portions, okay? I'm very big on seasoning things as we go. So you want your asparagus to have a lot of flavor. So I'm going to zest a little bit of the fresh lemon on here. Not a lot. That's going to enhance the flavor. A little bit of sea salt, about a 1/4 teaspoon, not a lot. Just a little. And then a drizzle of oil, olive oil. So these are going to roast along with the salmon. Let's give that a good toss. And then I'm going to leave a little space in the middle for our salmon. And this recipe can serve 4 people, but we're doing it for 2 today. But when I include the recipe, I'll give you for 4 portions. Look at our beautiful salmon. Oh my gosh. Let's cut that right in half. And I have them leave the skin on. I like it. I think whenever you can protect the fish, people can choose to take the skin off when they eat it. And then this is a little trick I learned. Take your salmon and cut it crosswise just into a little slit. And won't shrink up, and it'll cook a little evenly. Not a real deep cut. Just enough to open it up to the heat from the bottom of your pan. Okay, I'm going to set that on here. There's one. And sometimes I tuck in this little flap underneath. That is a good thing to do so everything cooks evenly. See, this little flap isn't as thick as the rest of the fish. So leaving a space around the edge, just a little bit in the middle. I'm going to take and pour this glaze over the top of your salmon. In this glaze, I made the full recipe, so this would do 2 more pieces of salmon, so it would serve 4 people. And then, of course, you do a few more asparagus. And this doesn't take very long. We're going to pop this in the oven and let it cook for I check it after about 12 minutes and see if it's flaky, but it doesn't take a long time. And again, I have the oven set at 400. So when we come back, we're going to finish off our risotto. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. Our salmon is cooking away in the oven. I think they were fairly thick cuts, probably take 12 to 15 minutes, but I'm going to check on them. Here's our risotto, but it's not risotto yet. We're going to make it into risotto. So see, we just cooked it the regular way. We didn't have to stir out adding labels of stock every 2 minutes. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter. That's going to make it creamy. And this is going to be really good with the salmon and the asparagus. We're going to serve that over the rice. So I have a nice platter here. I add that till the butter melts. And then we're going to add the zest and juice of half a lemon because these were very large. You just want a flavor of the lemon, a little brightness. So the zest, I should have zested that first, like I always say, which I didn't do. And then the juice, your lemon cut side down, it barely fits in there. And I would say just a half a teaspoon, just about that much. add that in. Some Parmesan cheese, freshly grated Parmesan, about half a cup. And that's optional, but I like the flavor it brings, a little richness. Now, it doesn't quite look like risotto yet. It just looks like a rice dish, right? But this is my secret, and I've been doing this for years, so don't tell anybody. I call it risotto because it's creamy, and you know what this is? Ricotta cheese. And I'm going to start with a tablespoon and see how it looks. It's just regular cottage cheese. And that is going to give this a creamy finish without all the work. Now, unless you're having a seasoned chef at your house, this is going to be really good flavor. So we're just going to let that set. And I'm going to cover this to keep it warm, and we're going to finish off our dessert. Put that over here with the cover on the back burner. And so we only added 1 tablespoon of ricotta cheese. And like I said, I did these ahead of time. These are our chocolate peanut butter puddings that I let set. And these I did with the sugar substitute, a little stevia. And we're going to do a topping on here and a little garnish. And I have here some beautiful whipped cream that's fresh. And you gotta have whipped cream when you're doing pudding. There's just no way around it. Add as much or as little as you like. And I thought it would be a fun garnish too, if you'd like. Some nice chopped peanuts would be nice. And then, this is my little trick. I have chocolate chips in here, however many you want. And we're just going to grate those over the top. Or you could chop them or do shaved, or you could even do a little more cocoa powder on the top if you'd like. And those are our creamy, dreamy chocolate peanut butter cups. These are incredible. And look at how easy this is. And it's a great thing to do with your children because it teaches them that you can even make pudding at home, and it's so much better than anything that you can buy in the store. So we're going to set that aside. How many more minutes? We have about 4 more minutes, and we're going to plate everything up. This is a great spring dinner for anybody, for company. So we're going to finish up, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Look at our beautiful roasted salmon, a glazed salmon. The asparagus are done just right. You want them a little crispy. And I threw in some lemon wedges too, because that makes it so, the lemon's so juicy and tender. And you can add those as a garnish to your dish. And then I'm going to add our risotto, creamy risotto rice. Look at this, right to the center of our platter. Look at how creamy that is. Because remember, we added ricotta cheese to the finished rice to make it creamy. And you won't even be able to tell the difference. So let's spread that out right to the edge. This is a wonderful spring or company meal. For Easter, why not mix it up a little and do a salmon dish for Easter? So there's that. Take our beautiful salmon. This pan is hot. Remember, we cooked this at 400 degrees for about 18 minutes. Look at that, how juicy. Put it right over the middle on an angle. And we're going to take our asparagus and put them all around. For color, look at how beautiful that is. And because these asparagus were so thin and young and tender, they don't need a lot of cooking. If you had a thicker asparagus, you might want to just blanch them for a minute or two. But this time of year, you can get some really good, young, thin asparagus, and they're so good for you. And let's put a nice wedge of lemon on each side, like so. It's all caramelized. And you can serve that, just juice the lemon, fresh lemon, right over the top of that. And that's going to be a feast. Move this over to the side. A nice Pinot Grigio would be wonderful for a wine to have on the side. But this is really all you need for your welcome to spring feast. Everything is right there. The risotto, the glaze is dripping into that lovely risotto. Your roasted asparagus with a little lemon zest in it. The fresh lemons that we've roasted. Look at the color that you get on, and there's so much juice in there. And that is a whole meal. The salmon is done to perfection. That's all you need to do is just a light glaze and a beautiful chocolate peanut butter pudding. That is a good thing to try and surprise everybody. They're going to be amazed when you say it's homemade. No box mixes here. So I hope you try these recipes. Thank you to everybody who writes in with your comments and suggestions. I read them all. It's so fun to hear from you. And thank you for watching, and may the fork be with you.